Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here with a video for My Favorite Things. In today's episode of MFTv, we're going to be doing some spotlight stamping. This is a really fun way to take a large background stamp that tends to be kind of busy and just kind of highlight a section of it, but still have the entire background on the card front. I love doing this, and there's so many possibilities with this fun technique. So to start off, I have my background stamp that we're going to be using, which is the Bundles of Blossoms. I also have 2 pieces of white cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I have some black licorice hybrid ink because we're going to be doing some Copic coloring, and I'm also going to use my MISTI to do the stamping. Now, when using a cling mount stamp, you want to take out the foam padding inside your MISTI. You want to just work right on the bottom surface. And what I did is I just kind of put some adhesive onto the plastic bottom area of my MISTI so that I could put my paper on there and kind of hold it in place. Because I know that I'm going to double stamp this image to make it really dark and bold, so I want to make sure that that paper doesn't shift at all so that I get a nice stamped image when I do it twice. And then I'm going to repeat the exact same process. I'm going to remove the background piece here that we've stamped. And then I'm going to take the second piece of white cardstock that I've already trimmed down, and I'm going to adhere this to the bottom of the MISTI as well. You don't need a ton of adhesive, just enough to make sure that that paper doesn't go anywhere. And then I'm going to ink up this stamp, and I'm going to stamp this twice onto this white cardstock panel. Now you can see there I'm getting some ink on the bottom of my MISTI just because the stamp is obviously much larger than the background area. That is no problem at all. That's why I like to kind of take out the paper, because I figure why waste the paper? When you stamp like this onto the background piece, it just completely wipes up with a baby wipe, so it's super easy to clean up. And then I just put everything back together, and I have my 2 stamp pieces, and I was able to use my cling mount stamp in my MISTI stamping tool. So now to create the spotlight part, this is the fun part. I'm going to use some Copic markers, and I'm going to color a section of this background. Now I only want one section because we're going to spotlight one area of the stamped background. So I took a stitch rectangle die that I'm going to use to cut out a piece of this background piece here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of set it onto the background, figure out kind of where I want to spotlight the image. And then I'm just taking a pencil and very quickly just kind of drawing around the rectangle. It doesn't have to be neat. You're never going to see this. It's obviously larger than the rectangle, so when we do the die cutting, you're never going to see that pencil area on the outside. This is just going to allow me to color a section of the background rather than coloring the entire thing, since we're not going to use it all. And it's going to let me kind of color a little bit more in a larger area than what the rectangle is, to make sure that when I do die cut it, I'm not going to have any white space, and I'm going to have a completely colored in rectangle area. So now what I'm going to do is I just picked out some Copic colors. I'm not using a lot of colors. With this background, there is a ton of different areas that can be colored. There's flowers and leaves and just different designs kind of all mixed together. So you can definitely use a ton of different colors. But I decided to keep it a little bit minimal, and I just used some shades of green, some shades of coral, and some shades of aqua. And then I used a tiny bit of gray at the end. There was a few small areas that I wanted to color in, but I didn't want to use any of the 3 colors I had already used. So I thought gray would be a nice color to kind of mix into these colors that I have on this design. So I'm not going to show all of the coloring. I'm just kind of speeding through the coloring that I did do. And it's just pretty basic. I'm not really doing anything too crazy with my Copic markers. I'm not even really blending a whole ton. I'm just laying down my initial light color, and then I'm going with a darker color kind of in the center areas and kind of behind the petals, just to kind of make them stand out a bit. And then I'm taking my medium color to kind of blend it out into the lighter color, and then just taking the lightest color once again and kind of blending it all together. Now there's some areas where I did no blending at all. I just kind of added some color. And I like to I kind of picked some different areas that I wanted to use the same color. It just speeds up the coloring if you kind of do all the green stuff at once, and then all the coral stuff, and then all the aqua stuff, and just kind of color in that way so that you're kind of using the same markers in your hand and you're not constantly switching them. And it just kind of speeds up the coloring, especially with this type of image where, like I said, it has a ton of different areas that need to be colored. So I just am continuing on here. I did my greens. I kind of focused the greens on the leaves, and then I added a little bit of green to one of the flowers. I used the corals for mainly just flowers, and then I used the aquas for the flowers as well. And then I had some areas where, like I said, I wanted to add the color in, but I didn't want to use any of the 3 shades of color that I had already used, so I thought gray would be a nice touch in here. So I really like how it ended up turning out. So I'm just kind of doing some last minute coloring, making sure I have everything exactly how I want it. And then once I have that finished, I have the whole spotlight area completely colored in. And I love how this looks. I love the colors. Everything just went together really well. So now I'm going to take that stitch rectangle and I'm going to run this entire panel through my die cutting machine and just cut out the section of color in the middle. So now that I have a die cut, you can see I have this beautiful piece of colored flowers and leaves, and it's going to fit perfectly on top of this background that we've already created because it's the exact same stamped area. So by using the MISTI tool and kind of positioning my paper in the exact same spot in the tool, this allowed me to have the background piece, which is going to remain black and white, and I was able to layer this colored piece directly on top and make the design completely go together. And I decided to give the spotlight panel a little bit of dimension. I like the little bit of shadow you kind of get underneath of it when you raise it off the card a bit. So I just used some crafty foam and put some on the back of this panel, and now I'm adhering it onto the card base. And you just kind of want to figure out where the pattern is, make sure it lines up perfectly, so that if you were to have no color at all, it would look like the continuous stamp that was on the background. And now I have this great spotlight area that has a ton of color, but I still have the awesome design of the stamp in the background area in black and white. So now we're going to move on and stamp a sentiment. So I'm just using a wavy banner die from the Blueprints 21 Dynamics die set. And I'm also using the Essential Sentiment stamp set to stamp a sentiment on there. And when I put this sentiment onto my acrylic block, I just kind of positioned it so that it would follow the wave of that banner, so that when I stamped it on there, it would completely line up and it would look like it's meant to go with that banner. I just love with clear stamps that you're able to kind of manipulate them a bit and make them kind of bend and curve for the space that you're going to be stamping on. And then once I had everything stamped, I was good to go. I put some adhesive onto the back area of the banner, mainly in the center since the two end pieces are going to hang off of that spotlight area. And then I adhered it directly onto that piece. And now that we have the whole panel complete, I just went ahead and added adhesive to the entire back of that, and I'm just adding it to a white top folding card base. And I love how the pattern is the whole entire background and there's no border or anything. I wanted it to be completely the same size as the card base so that the stamped area is the entire card front. And then to finish it off, I decided to add a few clear sequins, just 3, 2 at the top area and 1 at the bottom on the colored spotlight panel, and then that's going to complete today's card. And that's also going to bring us to this week's giveaway. So if you would like a chance to win the Bundles of Blossom stamp that I used in this card design, please leave a comment down below and we will pick one random winner and announce it in next week's episode of MFTv. And please make sure to check the description box of this video to see the winner from last week's MFTv giveaway. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.